Welcome. Today, I'm very excited to have my guest, Shoshana Chaim, who is a recent best-selling author. She's a former kindergarten teacher and physical education teacher, I like the combination, who turned wellness expert. And she now concentrates on helping families make healthy lifestyle choices. She also teaches children's yoga and hosts the Plant Trainers podcast. She lives in Toronto with her husband and 2 children. Welcome, Shoshana.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for having me.
Tell me about your book. I love the story. I'm a peaceful goldfish. So tell me about the story.
Thank you. Yes. So here it is. If you're watching, I'm a Peaceful Goldfish. I'm a Peaceful Goldfish is a book that I wrote for my son to be able to take deep breaths, connect his mind and his body, because he was having a hard time one day in particular after school, but it was coming up a lot. And his breathing was shallow. It was like hyperventilation. He wasn't connecting with me. He wasn't connecting with his body. He wasn't able to calm down. And it was just long fights with himself, right? Like flailing on the bed. And I couldn't teach him to take the deep breaths that I had learned to do. Coming out of that situation with my husband, having PTSD, some mental health issues, mindfulness, meditation, breathing became really important for me and a really big tool for me. And kids don't always listen to their mothers. So trying to teach your own child something in the moment when they're already frustrated just doesn't work. And having been a kindergarten teacher, I was still at the time, I was like, where's the book, right? We're going on a field trip. Let's read a book. We're going to eat plants now. Let's read a book. But here we are, like trying to breathe and calm down. There was no book to teach them how to do that. So I said, well, it's not in the library. It's not on my shelf. It's not on the internet. I better write it. So I wrote that book in order to give kids an opportunity to practice taking those deep breaths in the moment before they're frustrated, before they're sad, before they're upset. I wanted every child in the whole world to be able to see themselves in that book in some way or another, so that they can have some connection with it, so that when they're in that mood, either their brain somehow reminds them, or an adult can have lots of cues to be able to remind them to take a deep breath, like some of the characters in I Am a Peaceful Goldfish.
I love that, because I feel anxiety is so widespread right now for so many reasons. Obviously, COVID.
There's 6 million children diagnosed with depression and anxiety right now.
I mean, that is just, to me, if you are already, it should be your happiest years. And if you're already starting with your brain chemistry in this state, it's not going to get easier unless you have the tools to get out of that. And I will tell you, in all my years working with children, 90 to 95% of the kids I worked with are shallow breathers, because they are always on that state of high alert, what's danger's going to come next. And that's their nervous system's just like that. And so that breathing component, I have always been a proponent, and I always teach my kids, and I love how you do that before you get in that situation. And I do that with my son, who he has some challenges, and it makes his stress level go up because of the challenges. And he knows now, like he breathes, and we have curbed. I mean, we used to have a lot of trouble in school and a lot of, we call it the flipping the lid. He would really get upset to where he would lose the capacity to, like your son, right? The capacity to calm himself down, because once you elevate to that state, it is very hard to come down. It's just time and exhaustion usually, until the fight or flight system says, we're done.
Yeah. So if you can cut it off when you're still here, you might stay here a little while, but then once you go there, it's really hard to get down. So, and that's the point of it, right? So the kids in the book, the things go wrong. The ice cream falls on the floor, the pencil breaks, the book tears, the tail falls off of the toy, right? The things that make the kids at first, kind of flip their lid, as you said. And my daughter's done some work with flipping the lid too. So then, then they catch the eye of the goldfish. That's just so peaceful in the goldfish bowl, right? Like just like they're floating and they're like, can't I be like that instead of how I am now? So they act it out. So they take their slow, big breath in and then they let it out to blow the bubbles. And then they catch the eye of the elephant where the tail fell off. So she has an idea too. So they take a deep breath in, and when they breathe out, they're trumpeting like an elephant. So it's child-led, it's imagination, it's not instructive, it's cooperative. And what I really hope for all the parents and educators who read this book with their children is that they figure out which page the child identifies with the most. If it's the elephant, if it's the pinwheel, if it's the bells, if it's the dragon. And then you say, let's breathe like the dragon. Let's breathe like the pinwheel, because kids are not just auditory, but they're visual, they're kinesthetic. So maybe the elephant works for them because they can do the trunk, or maybe they picture like all the colors on the pinwheel. We need to give, and it's not just my book, but it's what else can we find in a child's environment that makes them feel calm, that we can then help them to connect to when we see that they're starting to bubble up a little bit, because they're not just going to think about it the way we think about things. And sometimes we don't even think about things the way we should too. So I wanted to create more learning opportunities for different kind of learners within like a 20-page book.
But I love that because they could have the visualization with the thought of this is what I need to do in that moment, which is so powerful, so they can connect to whatever character. And I love that you're teaching this now, because these are things we should have learned in school, learning how to deal with those challenges, because life is going to have challenges. It is the way it is. And to have those tools early on, I really like that. And I don't know if you even realize with the elephant, when you did this, I'm certified in a program called Brain Gym. And that is one of the movements, the elephant in the Brain Gym. And it really has a kinesthetic component to it. Do you know Brain Gym, or did you just?
So I'm actually certified 101 in Brain Gym, but it was when I was living in Hong Kong. So it was 14 years ago. So I don't remember the elephant one. I remember maybe it was like more of a sweeping, anyway. But like I remember a lot of the crisscross. I'll do this all the time, and I'll be like, oh, I should have drank water first. So I don't use it on a regular basis, but just kind of being in phys ed and kindergarten and having the Brain Gym and having a couple of other certifications that I've done over the years, things become mishmash in my brain and they kind of just become my own.
Yeah, I understand. No, but I love that because when you said that, and I was picturing all the different levels where kids can incorporate that. That is great.
Thank you.
Now, the breathing, and I think parents, we need that too. That is one of the things. And like I said before with my son, we haven't had an episode from school in, I can't tell you how long, because he learned to do the breathing and he stops and he does it throughout the day. So this is priceless. And to have a book where they can get into, because kids will choose what they decide. If we tell them, forget it. But if they pick it up, that's why I love how you have it in the story version, because then it clicks, then they pick it up and it's their choice to do it, which I love.
Exactly. And a lot of the schools are picking up on this, and a lot of the parents are picking up on this. And I always say to the school, the parents really need to know. And I always say to the parents, the school really needs to know, because the other thing I find is there's a big disconnect between mommy's expectations, daddy's expectations, grandma's expectations, babysitter's expectations, and teacher's expectations. And maybe teachers teaching a lot of great things, and maybe parents are teaching a lot of great things. But if it can be the same thing throughout, then the child can have even more benefit from it there. So I think that parent-teacher connection needs to be communicated there too, because then they don't have to learn different expectations for different places, and they can have the same vocabulary, which is less confusing, especially for younger children, or especially for children that are having developmental or learning issues moving forward. We really need to simplify so that they can spend their energy and time learning some of the other skills as well.
I love that you pointed that out. When my son was 4 or 5 and he was going into a new school, the school used conscious discipline as their method for, handling challenges. And I went and they encouraged parents to pursue this. So we were all using the same form of discipline. And I really like that because it does make a difference. It's so confusing going back and forth. So thank you for pointing that out.
No problem.
Now, as far as you working with families, like, tell me what you do with families when you work with them, and what are some of the challenges they're working through when they come to you?
So usually who ends up kind of knocking on the door are people who have tried a lot of things already and haven't really gotten results yet, right? Or haven't, or say, I've only gotten this far, I want to get a little bit further.
And what is it, like, in weight loss or health? Like, where's
it's really everything within health. At this point, it's a lot of, I don't know what else to do besides medication, and I don't want to go on the medication, or I'm already on the medication, but I want to reduce it as much as possible, or I want to be able to come off of it. So what can you offer, right? I believe that there is a time and a place for medication. I think that it saves lives. I think that there's a lot of people who, I think we said before, we don't know what we don't know, right? So I think that there are people who don't know, but if we can avoid side effects, if we could change our lifestyle, if we could figure out what the root cause is, if we can detox things from the body, if we can maybe use products that are helping in the same way, but aren't contributing more toxicity to the body. It's like we're getting good, but we're getting toxic at the same time. And then the body needs to concentrate on that. So, anything from diet to tapping exercises to meditation to sometimes I just audit people's diets or audit people's lives. Like they'll show me what 5 days in the life of this family looks like. And I'll be like, here's where we can make a little bit of tweaks, or here's a product that can really help, or let's take this out and put this in, or great, we want to leave the fish in the diet. That's fine. But how do we start to teach the kids to like the texture and the flavor of lentils? Right. So it's very individual for each family, for each person. And, sometimes, like I said, it's a quick audit and here's a couple of changes to make, come back in 3 months, let's make a few more. Sometimes it's a complete overhaul. And sometimes it just, here's the one thing that's going to really impact you right now.
I like that because I like that personal touch. I feel a lot of us need that because, information's out there, but we need people to help us through that. And I think having that connection of someone who can guide us through changes is invaluable. One of the things I love is, that I'm working on, and I know a lot of us are working on, trying to change our lifestyle to make it healthier, whether it's decreasing stress, eating better, exercising. And I've noticed it's hard to make sometimes that shift. A lot of us, we need really strong motivation to make healthier changes. And so tell me, what motivated you? Because I'm sure, this has been a journey, and now that you're a wellness expert, how did you start on this path of really looking at your own wellness and then helping others to achieve their wellness?
So I guess the path really started when I was a kid. I played outside like most of us did in the 80s and 90s, right? Like I played outside and I did all those things. And my parents took me to skating lessons, but I wasn't like an athlete as a kid, or it wasn't like super important to me. And then in high school, I started playing basketball. And as I left high school, I'm like, oh, I have nothing to do now. So I got into martial arts and working out at the gym. So that's really when I started getting into it for myself. And then when my son was born, in Canada, we have mat leave, which is beautiful and wonderful, but I was a little bit bored. So I'm like, oh, I'll become a personal trainer. I was already kindergarten and phys ed teacher. So it worked. But then what really happened was when I was pregnant with my second 11 years ago, my husband had a pain in his chest, and we were told that he had a tumor and heart disease and possibly another genetic disease, and that the chances of him living past 40 were quite small, and that there was a possibility that if we didn't operate within the next week, that he might not even be there for the birth of my daughter. So that's kind of how my daughter's life got started, being inside me with all of this stress going on. And it was really scary. It ended up being a benign tumor. After 9 months later, we found out that he didn't have that genetic disease, but he still had the heart disease. So he decided to look into our lifestyle and say, what are we doing that this is happening? We're personal trainers. We're both phys ed and school teachers. We're not gaining the 2 to 3 pounds a year like all of our friends are. We don't eat in restaurants and heavy foods very, very often. So why is this happening inside of his body and maybe mine, and we're not seeing it with everybody else? And that's when he found a plant-based lifestyle. So within 1 year of becoming plant-based, his tumor shrunk on its own with no medication, no operation, no nothing. And his heart disease was completely gone. And that's kind of when we said, this is for real. This is for good. We're never going back. We will make sure that the research is always supporting, but the research is supporting it, and our bodies are being supported by it, and we can't deny that. And that's kind of when we said, now's the time to get all the nutrition information, get all the nutrition certifications, and start just spreading the word and helping other people. And that's where the Plant Trainers podcast was born from, just to be able to get the word out to other people, because we only know what we know. We only are exposed to what we're exposed to. So we really wanted to give people the information, the education, and the tools should they choose to move forward with any degree of a plant-based lifestyle.
I will say I started the journey of learning more about food as medicine to help, my children. I wanted to help them increase their immune system, be healthier, and my kids never get sick. And so I really do feel a lot of it is because of the nutrients they're getting. And it's not just, I think a lot of people miss out the component. It's not about not eating meat. It's all of the additional things you are getting from the fruits, the vegetables, the nuts that our bodies need. Now, for those like myself who has a husband who's a carnivore, and they're trying to go plant-based, is there any information you can give those people to kind of go start the journey with going plant-based?
Yeah, of course. So I guess the first thing is just recognize, like I do with all of my clients, I meet people where they are. And, I've got more tools than just nutrition, more tools than just personal training, right? Like there's so much more that I do, but each individual is on their own journey. And just because you're a family unit, it doesn't mean that everybody's on that same journey at that same time. And be respectful. Don't ruin a relationship because of nutrition, because that ruins your relationship, but also the negativity that's going on impacts your health, impacts your food. If you're thinking about how upset you are with your husband or your wife while you're filling up the water jug, well, guess what? They're going to drink that negativity. Like we don't want that. So that's A is just let go of the ego, let go of the fact that you do know better, and just kind of let things be. But so I guess what I would do is I would see what works for the other person. Adam was plant-based. My husband was plant-based before I was, and Forks Over Knives had come out after. But as soon as it came out, he had me watch Forks Over Knives on Netflix. I don't believe it's on Netflix anymore. You can buy it online. I think I don't know when you're putting this out, but it's been free this month in May. And so there's ways to get your hands on that. But I saw that and I read the China study, and I read Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease by Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn. And it wasn't until I found a book called Skinny Bees. I don't know how clean or not you want it to be, but Skinny Bitches. And that book spoke to me. It was a girlfriend talking to a girlfriend, and it wasn't just about food. It was about the toothpaste that you use and the creams that you use. And I was like, yeah, well, why am I, putting extra stress on my body, putting extra oxidative stress, putting extra chemicals into my body, instead of my body dealing with all, like, healing all the cells that it could heal. It's every day going to war with everything I'm putting into my body. So I'm like, goodbye meat. So you might need to quietly and gently introduce them to many different things, because one thing will speak to one person and one thing will speak to another, and find a way to teach other people in the house to eat more plants. I'm not saying take away all the chicken. I'm not saying take away all the fish. The more foods you could get them used to eating, eventually when you do take away some of those foods, at least they'll have food left to eat. And make a whole bunch of chicken, marinate it, freeze it, and concentrate on the plant, on the healthy plant food every day. And then just, take the animal product out of the freezer and grill it. It's no problem, bing, bang, done. It doesn't take up your time. So you could still concentrate on fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, legumes, lentils, beans, all those good things.
I was surprised. So I don't know if you know that about me, but before we moved to Talon, I lived in Ottawa, Canada for 3 years.
Yes, I knew that. Yeah.
Okay. And when my son was doing his project for the food plate, I don't know, in America, we call it the food, we used to call it the food pyramid. And I was so amazed that meat was not on there.
So that was new. That was brand new. We call it the food guide, right? It's been everything. It's been a rainbow. It's been a pyramid. It's been a just like square. I don't know, but we always just call it the food guide. But a couple of years ago, there were lots of people, animal justice, there were a lot of people lobbying towards changing the food guide. And Canada looked at the research, really took it seriously. Dr. Jenkins was behind it. So many great people were behind it. And they did change the food guide. So now it's more like a third, like a third grains, a third protein, and a third fruits and vegetables kind of thing, or half, it depends. Anyway, it depends if you're looking at Canada or States, but what the protein area, 3 out of the 5 proteins that are there, they're representing plant-based proteins, right? So there's that the plant-based is really outweighing the animal products at this point. The research is showing time and time and time again that obesity, cancer, heart disease, all of these things are stemming from eating way too many animal products. And they changed it. And there was a lot of pushback from the meat and dairy industry, a lot of pushback, and a lot of recipes still contain meat and dairy, surprisingly, but I know it's because they were trying to make them a little bit happier. And it's baby steps for everybody too. But yeah, when you first look at that food guide, it's very plant-based, very plant heavy. And I'm very proud that Canada recognized the science and was able to make that change.
I loved that. I was thinking of something and now I lost it, because I was really in how you, one thing that got me, and I love it, it happens every year, is the food revolution, where they have all the speakers for 1 week. And it's amazing when you start digging into the information. You can't deny the information. It is really impactful with food.
Yeah, thank you. And then, sometimes it's even simpler than, working with me individually. Like I have a picky eater program that kind of teaches the parents how to teach the children, or teaches the parents the right behavior, so the children will start to pick up on other foods. Or sometimes it's just meal planning. So I have a meal planning mastery program where they just need to download the PDFs, watch the videos, learn how to meal plan for a week, and then you've learned how to meal plan for life. So sometimes it doesn't have to be such a dramatic change or so expensive, or working one-on-one. Sometimes it's really simple. And once you feel good about one thing, it's easy to make some other changes on your own too.
I think I will probably contact you about the meal planning, because that is one thing that is so challenging for me, and it would make my life so much easier to have a plan each week. I love how you're addressing picky eating, because so many of the families I work with are dealing with that challenge of kids that are very picky eaters. And, I think a lot of parents forget that, one, we need to be exposed to something 10 times the taste, the texture before before our palate and our mouth gets used to that. Sometimes we're just tired and we just, it's whatever's easy. So I like that you are addressing that, because, it's, from my kids, it was so important that they try everything, whether they like it or not, at least try it. And so
we're kind of integrating the picky eater and the meal planning at the same time. As you talk, I'm thinking, okay, well, if you're just tired and you just want something easy, then do the easy thing on the day that you're most tired. And on the day where you have energy, that's the time to spend your energy cooking a new thing, but also introducing a new thing to your family too. So don't do it on the night where you've only got the half an hour before you need to get out to baseball because you just came home from work and all those things. That's not the night to be introducing these new things to your kids, because your energy is going to be up here and their energy is going to be over there, and it's not going to work. But my kids with tofu, and you don't have to eat tofu, don't get me wrong, you don't have to eat tofu, but it was something my husband and I liked, and we really wanted the kids to be able to eat it. So I steamed it and I grilled it and I marinated it and I breaded it and I thised it and I batted it. And they were like, nope, 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 nope. It must have been time number 10 or 11 or something like that. And I made it like French fries. And I didn't deep fry it or anything. Like, I baked them. And my son was like, what's this? And I'm like, oh, it's a new kind of French fry. He's like, okay, French fries, I like those. I'm like, dip it in ketchup. So he likes ketchup. He dipped it in ketchup and he ate it. And my husband and I are looking at each other going, yes, but try not to show the emotion, right? And that's part of what I teach. Don't show the emotion that you're upset that they're not eating anything, and don't show too much emotion that you're excited, because then they're going to expect that every time, or they're going to catch on that like you trick them or whatever it is. But yeah, so from that day on, he ate it. He ate it steamed. He ate it marinated. He ate it breaded, and the little one followed along too, although she doesn't like ketchup. But yeah, the point is had I made it the French fries the first time, he wouldn't have necessarily liked it and eaten it the first time. And had I not made the French fries the 11th or 12th time, then maybe my kids still wouldn't be eating French fry, wouldn't be eating tofu today, because maybe I would have given up. And it's a huge staple in our house now and makes life so much easier. Tofu is our easy night.
Okay, very nice. I still have to learn how to cook tofu. I've tried a couple times. That's my hurdle that I need to overcome, is how to prepare it correctly. Wow. So as far as, so you work with the nutrition, you work with really getting over, with the tapping. So I guess you use that to get over mental blocks, or how do you use the tapping?
So sometimes people will
tapping, what it is.
Okay, so tapping is, and I don't call it EFT. I was taught it by an EFT specialist to use it specifically for my clients within wellness. And then in good Shoshana fashion, I take everything I learn and I say, well, that's not perfect. Now it's perfect. And I kind of change it around a bit. So like in terms of my tapping for wellness, basically there are pressure points on the body that speak to your subconscious. And your subconscious hears the words that you're saying. So when you think or say words out loud or sentences out loud as you're tapping and waking up your subconscious, you can almost rewrite, reprogram, edit everything that's going on. How many times have you said, I know that especially when I was going through like my harder times with anxiety, depression, PTSD, how many times have you said, rationally, I know this isn't going to happen, but I can't turn my brain off from thinking that it is. Right. So that's what we're kind of doing. We're telling our brain to match up with the other side of the brain at the same time. So, some examples are, I had a client who couldn't get on airplanes, right? I couldn't get on airplanes and always anxious, always worried, thinking that she was saying goodbye to her dog forever, that she'd never see her husband again. And like palpitations and sweaty and all of that, and really unpleasant experience. Loved getting to where she was going, or being where she was, but hated the travel. And, we tapped and tapped and tapped, and she felt better. We took her from like an 8 or 9 out of 10 anxiety level to like a 2 or a 3. I watched her because we were in the airport together and both going on separate flights. And I watched her walk right onto that flight. And she was like, she never had that problem again. In the back of her mind, maybe, but the emotional attachment and the physical reaction, no, right? I don't take away your memories. I take away it's almost like the anxiety that goes with it. Another woman just a couple of weeks ago knows what she needs to do to eat well, knows what she needs to do to exercise, but isn't bringing herself to do it. Has the best intentions every day, but just can't get over it. So what do? I ask her a series of very specific questions using her own vocabulary back to her about, what are you scared of? What are you scared of if you do it? What are you scared of if you don't do it? What do you want it to be like? And putting that together in the Tapping for Wellness series, so that she could then, next time she intends to put on her running shoes to take the kids to the park and actually walk to the park, that happens, right? And again, doesn't take away, like, it makes it easier to say no to the part of her body that's saying, I don't want to go, right? So it looks a little bit different for everyone. My kids, my son being really anxious about going to school and being with other kids in the class who aren't wearing masks during lunchtime or aren't wearing masks during recess, that was really hard for him at the beginning of the year. He never wanted to tap, and I'll call it rubbies for kids. Like, we'll rub the area instead of tap. And he actually asked for it. So, like, these are the things that I've been able to help people with. So sometimes it's about, letting that block kind of filter away.
I love how you combine all of these different aspects. I use tapping for my kids, and when they're upset, especially before they go to bed, because I never like them taking those emotions with them into, their sleep. And I love it. They love it because they know the feeling. And so if they're upset about something, we always get it down. And it's because they see that immediate effect, they're more prone to do it. I mean, so yeah, we use it all the time in our house.
Do you ever ask them what color they see?
No, I've always just counted.
So ask them what color they see. Yeah, like they should still give you a number out of 10, like how severe this feels, but say, is there a color that you attach with that? And it's gonna be red or dark purple or black, right? And then you're gonna tap, and they're gonna say, oh, it's a 5 now. And you're going to say, and what color do you associate with it? Well, if it's purple, it's going to be blue. And if it's red, it's going to be orange. And then you're going to tap again, and it'll go down to like the 2 or the 3, right? And then it's going to be, it's going to be like, oh, it's sky blue, or it's going to be, like yellow. And the colors are going to come down to warmer colors. And it's a great way for some kids, again, to connect in their own way, because maybe they're not numerical, right? So we can feel through color, and we could see color. So that can help some kids who aren't connecting with it as much, to see how things have changed, so that they trust you to do it again.
I like that.
Yeah. Let me know how that goes.
Yeah, I really like that, because I do feel colors are so impactful. I actually worked with several children who saw in colors. They actually, when I was yellow, my kids, one was blue, one was green, and that was their favorite colors, which was so interesting that he picked up on that. But yeah, no, I love that. And now for those people who are listening that maybe haven't been exposed to tapping, it is definitely something I would encourage to work with Shauna, because it does make a difference. And I love how you combine it all. Now, you also have a podcast, the Plant Trainers podcast. So what is the podcast about?
So the podcast is basically helping people improve their quality of life through plant-based nutrition and fitness. So, having been personal trainers. My husband's a high school phys ed teacher. So, taking all of that knowledge and taking our plant-based knowledge, and what we do is on a weekly basis, we are either doing our own episode, but usually we are interviewing other plant-based experts for ways for you to improve your quality of life. The concentration really is plant-based. I'd say the second concentration is fitness. And then third is just, we'll talk about tapping, we'll talk about meditation, we'll introduce all of these like new cool things, or maybe we'll even have like a social media expert on who will talk about how to use your social media to help other people learn about plant-based, right? So it could be anything, but 95% of the time people are 100% plant-based or vegan. And they share their own plant-based journey on how they became plant-based, some of the hurdles that they had, some of the victories that they had. And then we kind of get into our regular topic. And we do try to bring it back to the family as much as possible. It is more concentrated on adult, but because Adam and we have a young family, it was always important for us to say, yeah, we might be talking about triathlon, but that triathlete is a parent too, right? Or is an aunt or an uncle or something. So, that's another area that we like to bring it back to as much as possible. And we've had on some of the greats. So if you've seen Forks Over Knives or Cowspiracy, What the Health, Game Changers, we've had so many of those wonderful, wonderful doctors, nutritionists, you name it, on to really make sure that we are providing the most accurate information possible.
Wonderful. Well, one of the first projects I ever had moving overseas and trying to make a difference where I was, the grant and the project that I was doing was called Empowering Through Knowledge. And that is so important because when you know better, you do better. So thank you. I love that. Now, is there anything else? You're so dynamic in all of the different ways that you help families. Is there anything that we did not touch upon that?
I'm happy to talk about redox for a couple of minutes if that works for you.
Yeah, definitely.
So redox is something that I discovered 3.5 years ago. And, when you're an expert in your field, hopefully you're a little bit humble knowing you don't know it all and you're not an expert in every area within your field, but you're also very confident that if you don't know it all to this extent, that you at least know about it. So when I first started helping people with plant-based diets, they were coming off of their insulin, they were coming off of anti-inflammatory medication, they were sleeping in their beds for the first time in years. They were getting amazing results, losing 60 pounds, getting amazing results. But I found that I was getting sick and I was getting sicker and I was getting sicker and I was getting exhausted and I couldn't get out of bed and the kids were late for school and I couldn't think, couldn't write, couldn't work, stopped taking clients. And my whole life had fallen apart in a year. And I was like, how am I here? I'm doing everything I'm asking my other clients to do, everything that I would ask somebody else to do in my situation, going to every naturopath, every chiropractor, every Chinese medicine doctor, and giving them a chance, and nothing was working. I was falling asleep at red lights while I was the driver, and it was just not good. And a friend of ours had said, I'm putting together a group of people that I really want to help, change the world with this new health technology. Will you come and see if this could be part of your business? And I was like, no. And then I'm like, maybe I should just go. Maybe I should just listen. And when I went and I listened and I learned about the cells and I learned about redox in a whole other way that I had never experienced it before, was never explained to me before, I had never come across in science before. I was just blown away that, our cells are these little sacks of salt water and they need to communicate amongst each other. And if they're dilapidated and dehydrated and don't have the proper intercellular fluid, it's like jumping on a trampoline. You're not going to get very far, right? You need them to be nice and firm to create communication, because communication creates healing, right? If you cut your finger and you're not getting the message, you're not going to heal very quickly, right? We take like 2 weeks to heal a cut. Our kids take like a week, right? Or a day, right? They're just done. So when I learned about redox, that was something that helped me through my inflammation, through my hormone, through my mental health. And then I said, well, what if it could help this client with her son's skin condition? What if it can help my father with his sugar condition? And when I just started seeing the results from just healing your cells, that was incredible. So many people, like I said, will come to me because I've tried everything else and nothing's worked. This is something that on its own, and especially with everything else that you're doing for healthy lifestyle, is really like things that need to be detoxed from the body and or cells that need to heal, that because of communication isn't getting done. So that's another big part in how a lot of people choose to receive help with me, is that, they say, well, if it's worked for so many other people and it's non-toxic, I have nothing to lose. Let's see what happens. And, that 3-4 month period is really that sweet spot of when they start getting results. And then they have the energy to do all the other things they know they should be doing, but just couldn't get to because our minds are just so bogged down.
Yeah, I love that, because it is a bog down of all, whether it's the mental energy, or the physical, just detoxing. Wow, thank you. I know I have been learning more and more about redox, so I'm glad you were able to share that, because it is just, the stories, they speak for themselves.
They really do. And everybody's body is individual, of course, but we all have the same cell makeup. So it doesn't matter if you're in Canada, in United States, in Estonia, it doesn't matter where your parents came from or how old you are, our bodies still function fundamentally the same way. So it's just wonderful to see what happens there.
Well, thank you for all of those tools that are so beneficial. And I am such a proponent of wellness because, well-being should be something that is a standard, not the outside of the norm. And having you be able to help families through that, I think, is so invaluable. So thank you so much.
I'm so grateful. Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you, Shoshana.